DreamWorks has spent the last few years balancing recognizable brands, live-action reinventions, and franchise maintenance. That is not unusual. That is modern studio logic. But Forgotten Island feels different because it is one of the rare moments where DreamWorks is stepping back into original story territory with something that does not look disposable, generic, or afraid of being emotional. That matters especially now because original animated films are constantly being asked to fight harder for attention than franchise titles ever do, and this one looks like it understands that challenge. The first trailer sells a very clean emotional hook right away. Jo and Raissa become best friends in 1990, build a bond across years of growing up, and then find themselves on the edge of separation just as adulthood starts pulling their lives in different directions. That alone would be enough for a coming-of-age story. But Forgotten Island adds a fantasy mechanism that turns emotional distance into literal danger. The two are transported to Nakali, a mythical world where the longer they stay, the more of their shared memories disappear. Suddenly, this is not just a story about best friends drifting apart. It is a story about having to fight to keep the evidence of your bond from being erased. Sit turn to 5993 for search to turn to 5993 for search 8. That is a strong concept. More importantly, it is a concept with built-in emotional stakes. A lot of fantasy movies talk about memory as if it is just a clever magical device. Forgotten Island seems to understand that memory is identity, not abstractly, personally. If Jo and Raissa lose their memories of each other, they are not just forgetting a series of events. They are losing the part of themselves shaped by that relationship. That makes the whole film immediately more painful and more interesting than a standard get home from the magical world adventure. And the trailer knows it. That is why using Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me is such a smart move. It is a direct hit of nostalgia. Yes, but it is not empty nostalgia. It connects to the film's actual premise. It takes the emotional fear of being forgotten and ties it to a song already loaded with memories of youth, time, and fragile connection. That is the kind of trailer choice that can either feel manipulative or precise. Here, I think it feels precise because this movie clearly wants to weaponize nostalgia, but in a good way. It wants to make you remember what it felt like to think a friendship would last forever and then make you feel how terrifying it would be if forever started slipping away. That is a great dramatic engine. The visual side helps too. The world of Nakali looks colorful, kinetic, and alive in that very specific DreamWorks way where chaos and beauty are always fighting for control of the frame. But what keeps the trailer from feeling like just another quirky fantasy parade is the emotional pressure underneath it. This is not a look at all the cute creatures trailer. It is a look at the cost of staying here trailer. The island may be full of strange birds, giant monsters, mythic energy, and comic unpredictability, but the central rule poisons all of it. Stay too long, and you lose each other. That is elegant. Sit turn to 5993 for search to turn to 5993 for search 8. It also helps that the movie appears to be pulling heavily from Filipino mythology and cultural influence, which gives it a specific flavor instead of a generic one. That is a huge advantage. Fantasy gets much stronger when it feels rooted in something lived, rather than assembled from random familiar pieces. Joel Crawford and Januel Mercado have both talked about the film coming from a deeply personal place, with Mercado's family connections and a production trip to the Philippines shaping the emotional and cultural texture of the project. That does not automatically guarantee authenticity, but it does tell me this is not just aesthetic borrowing for visual novelty. There seems to be actual personal investment behind it. Sit turn to 5993 for search to turn to 5993 for search 8. And that is exactly what a movie like this needs, because original animation does not survive on concept alone anymore. It needs identity. It needs a reason for audiences to feel that this is a world worth entering rather than just another animated product landing on a release calendar. Forgotten Island may have that. Reason. The creative team is a major part of why I am taking it seriously. Joel Crawford and Januel Mercado are not random hires. Crawford directed Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which remains one of DreamWorks' best recent films and one of the strongest examples of how stylized animation, emotional reflection, and pop energy pacing can work together instead of pulling apart. Mercado worked alongside him there too, and you can already feel some overlap in how Forgotten Island uses motion, color, and emotional texture. Not because it looks identical, but because it seems built on the same belief that animation can be playful and haunted at the same time. Sit-turn to 5993 for search to turn to 5993 for search 8. That is a very good sign, because Puss in Boots: The Last Wish did something a lot of animated movies fail to do. It made fear and mortality feel real without suffocating the fun. Forgotten Island seems to be attempting a similar balancing act with memory and friendship. If it can pull that off, it could end up landing much harder than people expect from a DreamWorks original, and the voice cast gives it even more personality. H.E.R. and Liza Soberano as Jo and Raissa make immediate sense for this kind of emotionally driven friendship story. Dave Franco, Jenny Slate, Manny Jacinto, Dolly De Leon, Joe Coy, Ronnie Chung, and Lisa Longa all add flavor to the world around them. And just reading that lineup tells me the film is going to aim for a mix of warmth, oddness, and comic edge rather than one flat emotional note. Sit-turn to 5993 for search to turn to 5993 for search 4. That kind of cast can really help a fantasy movie breathe. It is also worth noting that DreamWorks has not exactly been flooding the market with original animated features lately. Between brand extensions and live-action adjacent projects, something like Forgotten Island automatically feels more important. It is not just another title. It is a test of whether audiences will still show up for a visually ambitious, emotionally specific, non-franchise animated movie if the premise is strong enough and the marketing knows how to frame it. Sit-turn to 59934. Search to turn to 59934. Search 19 and the release date matters there too. Forgotten Island arrives on September 25, 2026, which is an interesting slot. It is not being buried in January. It is not being positioned like an afterthought. It has enough room to build word of mouth if the emotional side of the movie hits. That matters because this feels like the kind of film people might not fully understand from a one-sentence description, but could absolutely fall for once they actually see how the friendship and memory hook plays out. Sit-turn to 5993 for search to turn to 5993 for search 17. What I like most about this trailer, though, is that it understands the difference between sentiment and emotional risk. This is not just friendship is important, that would be too easy. This is friendship may be the very thing you are about to lose while fighting to save it. That is a much better story, and it is one that feels especially potent for anyone who has ever had a friendship shaped by age, place, family pressure, distance, or the quiet realization that growing up sometimes means watching people become harder to hold onto. The fantasy framework lets DreamWorks visualize that anxiety in a heightened way, but the core fear is painfully ordinary. That is why it works. That is why it could hit. So where do I land on Forgotten Island after this first trailer? I think it looks like one of the most promising animated originals DreamWorks has put on the board in years. Not because it is trying to outbrand the studio's franchises, but because it is doing the opposite. It is leaning into specificity, into culture, into memory, into friendship as something magical enough to anchor an entire fantasy world. And if Crawford and Mercado really found a way to merge Filipino myth, teen transition, and the fear of forgetting into something emotionally coherent, then this could become the exact kind of movie people remember longer than the safer, louder releases around it. That is the upside here, not just a good DreamWorks movie, a meaningful one. So now, I want to know what you think. Does Forgotten Island look like the rare original animated film that could actually break through in a franchise-heavy market? Or do you think DreamWorks still has a tougher sell on its hands than the trailer makes it seem? And one more thing, do you think the memory loss hook is the movie's best idea? Or the kind of emotional risk that could make this story hit much harder than most people are expecting right now? That is the big question, and September 25th suddenly looks very interesting. I'll see you in the next one.